Okay, so we all have our favorite brands, those ones that we just, kind of love to love.
Right.
And sometimes those brands are so beloved that we, the loyal consumers, we give them nicknames, right?
Yeah.
Starbucks morphs into Starbs. Bloomingdale's get shortened to Bloomies. It's almost like a term of endearment, Like we're on a first name basis.
It's true.
But here's the thing. What happens when companies, the brands themselves, try to use those nicknames? Is it still as endearing? That's what we're diving into today, the kind of surprising impact of nickname branding.
And it really is fascinating, because on the surface, it seems like a harmless, even smart idea. Like, if we're already calling these brands by their nicknames, why wouldn't they want to get in on the action? I mean, you mentioned Bloomingdale's. Oh. They even went a step further and opened a store actually called Bloomie's, really leaning into that casual, we're all friends vibe.
Yeah.
But some recent research is showing that it might not be that simple.
Okay, so before we get into why it might backfire, let's talk about some specific examples.
Sure.
The research mentions Target, with that whole Target thing. And of course, McDonald sometimes goes by Mickey D's. Even Cadillac, they had that old slogan, the caddy that zigs. So I'm curious, back then, were these companies aware of any potential downsides, or were they just kind of like flying blind?
I mean, honestly, back then, this research just didn't exist. So it's really hard to say for sure what their thought process was. But what I find really interesting now is that researchers are uncovering the why behind these marketing decisions. And it all comes down to something called illocutionary meaning.
All right, break that down for me. I got to be honest, it sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a mouthful, right? But the concept itself is actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Basically, it means that who is speaking matters just as much as what they're actually saying. Think of it this way. Like, if your mom tells you to clean your room, it carries a totally different weight than if your friend just casually suggests you tidy up a bit.
Okay, yeah.
Same message, right? But the impact is totally different because of who said it.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Exactly. So when a company adopts a nickname that, let's be real, consumers gave them, it can feel a bit, presumptuous,
Yeah.
Like they're assuming this level of familiarity they haven't actually earned. And that can actually signal a loss of brand power and control, which brings us right back to your example of Radio Shack and the Shack.
It's like they were desperately trying to rebrand as this cool, approachable hangout spot, but instead it felt a bit, desperate.
Yeah.
And then, boom, bankruptcy.
It's tough to say for sure if that name change was the sole cause, but it definitely didn't do them any favors. And this whole idea of companies potentially losing control of their brand narrative when they use these nicknames, that's a key takeaway from the research.
So this isn't just some theoretical marketing debate. We're talking about real consumer behavior here. What kind of consequences are we talking about specifically?
Well, for one, the research found that using a brand nickname can actually decrease social media engagement.
Really?
Yeah. They analyzed a ton of Chevrolet's posts on X, what used to be called Twitter, and posts that used Chevy. They consistently got fewer likes and shares compared to posts that used the full name Chevrolet.
Wow, that is fascinating. So there's a measurable difference in how people respond online based on whether a company uses a nickname or not.
Exactly.
Wow.
And get this, it's not just social media. The research also looked at how nicknames affect things like click-through rates on ads. Do people click or not? And they found that ads using Target's Tarzay nickname and UPS's Big Brown nickname significantly lower click-through rates than those using the more formal brand names.
Okay, so we're talking about real, tangible impacts on marketing campaigns here.
Right.
Because if people aren't engaging with your content, if they're not clicking on your ads, that's a problem.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets even more interesting. This whole nickname effect can even influence how much people are willing to pay for a product.
Wait, are you serious? Just using a nickname can make people less willing to shell out their hard-earned cash. Tell me more.
Yeah, seriously. They did studies with Starbucks, Rolex, and BMW.
Wow.
And across the board, people were willing to pay a higher price, a premium, when those brands used their full formal names. But when it came to the nicknames, not so much. So yeah, this whole nickname thing, it can actually hit a company's bottom line.
Wow. That is pretty eye-opening. Honestly, I always thought brand nicknames were supposed to make companies seem more approachable, more relatable, hey, we're just like you.
Right.
So why is it backfiring?
Well, I think it goes right back to that idea of brand power we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Because by using a nickname, especially one that consumers came up with on their own, companies can kind of accidentally inadvertently diminish their own authority, you know?
Yeah.
It's like they're kind of giving up, ceding control of their image, and that can make them seem, well, less prestigious, less worthy of a higher price tag.
Right.
But, and this is where things get really interesting, this effect, it's not the same for every single brand out there.
Okay, so you're telling me there's hope. Not every company is doomed to fail because of a nickname.
Exactly. Researchers, they dug a little deeper, and they started looking at different brand personalities, specifically those that we see as competent versus those that we perceive as, like, warm.
Okay. Yeah.
So, think about it. We expect different things from, say, like, a huge tech giant like Apple compared to, like, the local bakery we love, right?
Right.
Apple, they need to project this aura of, like, competence and innovation.
Right.
Whereas that bakery, they thrive on feeling warm and friendly, like inviting. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
And what the researchers found is that using a nickname is way more damaging to those competent brands, those ones that need to project that authority, because it undercuts, like directly undermines that sense of authority, that control that they're trying to convey. Imagine like a super serious law firm calling themselves Law Bros.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't really inspire the same level of confidence, would it?
No, not at all. It makes so much sense. But for a brand that's already kind of like leaning into that warmth, that community vibe, a nickname might not be quite as detrimental.
You got it. It all comes down to brand alignment.
Okay.
Trying to like force a nickname when it clashes with your core brand message.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
But there's like one final piece to this whole nickname puzzle, and it has to do with the message, the actual message a brand is putting out there.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So you're saying it's not just about who you are as a brand, but it's also about what you're saying at that moment.
Yes, exactly. The research found that even for those very competence-focused brands, using a nickname might be, well, less damaging when they're promoting something that feels more communal, more pro-social, like a charitable cause or something.
Interesting. So, like, if a brand is known for being super buttoned up, but then they use a nickname to say, hey, we should all come together to support this really important cause.
Right.
That might actually work in their favor.
It might kind of soften the blow, for sure, because, yeah, maybe they are diluting their brand power just a little bit by using that nickname, but they're doing it for something bigger than themselves.
Right.
Aligning themselves with this sense of community, of shared purpose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the context matters. It matters a lot.
This is giving me so much to think about. It's like nickname branding is this high stakes game, and this research is like getting a peek at the playbook, you know? So where does this all leave us? I mean, if nicknames can be so tricky for brands, you know, to navigate effectively,
Right.
should they just like avoid them completely? Is there any way to tap into that like nickname magic without totally shooting themselves in the foot?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, this research, it definitely throws some cold water on the idea of like just slapping a nickname on everything and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
But it also kind of opens up some, I think, really intriguing possibilities.
Okay.
What if instead of trying to control these nicknames, you know, like this some kind of top-down thing,
Right.
companies actually found ways to like encourage and amplify the nicknames that consumers are already using.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So like embrace the user-generated content.
Exactly.
Instead of McDonald's being like, hey, come grab a burger at Mickey D's, they're sharing a fan's like hilarious TikTok about, you know, going on a late night Mickey D's run.
Yes, exactly. Let the fans be the ones to forge that like casual connection.
Right.
Let them tell the brand story, but in their own words.
Right.
It just feels more authentic, more relatable when it's coming from, you know, fellow consumers.
Right, right. It's like that old saying, show, don't tell.
Yes.
But in this case, it's more like, let them show and we'll amplify.
I love that. That's perfect because it really captures like the essence of this approach. By embracing, you know, kind of the organic nature of these nicknames, brands can tap into that positive sentiment, that feeling of like closeness without accidentally undermining like all the work they've put into building their brand power.
Yeah, yeah.
But of course, it's not as simple as like just reposting any mention of a nickname, right?
Right.
I mean, companies still need to be strategic about it, mindful of their brand personality and the specific message they're trying to get across.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I'm going to be like seeing brand nicknames everywhere I look now, but like with this whole new understanding, you know.
That's not that.
Thank you so much for taking me on this journey.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. And hey, you know, whether it's brand nicknames or like the next big thing in marketing.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to, just stay curious and keep asking those why questions. Because the consumer landscape, it's always changing.
Right.
And the more we understand, like, the forces that are shaping it, the better equipped we'll all be to, navigate it effectively.
I completely agree. This has been another deep dive. Thanks for listening.